Your target is the Santa Blanca drug cartel. Their network relies on fear, violence, and intimidation. You'll need to destroy them from the inside.
Hello all of you small groups of tangos, it's Jules Gillysuit Gill here, and recently I've been out in the wilderness destabilizing cocaine cartels in Ubisoft's latest in the Tom Clancy lineage, namely Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands. What a f***ing mouthful. But is this game as crazy and unpredictable as the title suggests, or does it just stumble into the desert never to be seen again? Well, let's find out. You're part of a small group of super-secret soldiers tasked with taking down the gang-controlled country of Bolivia. But standing in your way is a cavalcade of criminals, each with their own little empires, henchmen, and corrupt special forces units. It's less a branching narrative and more of a tangle of interweaving short stories, all of which lead back to the source in the shape of this tattooed tyrant. In essence, you need to destabilize all of his sectors in order to tackle him face to inked up face. If this seems familiar to you, then it might be because you played Crackdown on the Xbox 360, as this is, in essence, the same plot, but with slightly less super soldiers. These individual stories that make up the larger picture vary in terms of quality, with some providing engaging little tales about billionaire playboys and rogue ranger agents, while others are so forgettable that it actually harms the experience. If the player doesn't care about these criminals, then it makes doing the simple, short, and sometimes lackluster submissions to draw them out feel like a chore, but more on that later. Supplementing the main narrative is a library of extra information provided either through your team, your handler, or sometimes through documents that you'll find in the map. Again, the quality is a little hit or miss, so sometimes you'll be told information you fail to see the importance of, whereas some tales can be an excellent spark for igniting desire to topple these local kingpins. Either way, you will not be short on chatter or intel being pushed towards you. In terms of graphics, Wildlands is a polarizing affair. In some areas the game can look lush, vibrant, and even welcoming. But then glaring technical issues like some very noticeable pop-in or some awful muzzle flash animations make the game seem like something that was more suited to the last generation consoles. Ubisoft have loudly proclaimed that their game world is one of the biggest ever put to disc, and that statement rings true as you're overlooking a vast expanse below you which begs to be explored. However, this too is hampered by bugs and clipping, which makes the environment feel a little arduous, and leaves the question remaining of whether a smaller, more focused map might have been better produced. In terms of the HUD and UI, Wildlands offers a very clean style, which is quickly becoming the homogeneous look for Ubisoft titles of late. But no complaints from me here, as it was easy to navigate and everything was able to be accessed easily. Customization options for gun and character are pretty good as well, all bar the limited facial changes, but there's enough variety to make your character both stand out from the crowd and feel quite personal. Overall, despite its buggy nature, this is still a game which contains a lot of subtle detail, and there will be many times that you'll be left admiring its beauty. Now here we hit yet another fork on the road. On the one side, there's a smooth, tarmacked, and inviting path which pleasingly shows you combat which can be considered, tactical, and in places exhilarating. When a plan comes together, it's empowering and you truly understand what the game set out to achieve. The shooting is tight, the customization of loadouts is vast, and it can be genuinely terrifying when a large patrol is mere inches away from you and you're just praying that none of them need to take a piss in the bush that you're hiding behind. But then there's the other road, and this one is so bumpy, jagged, and downright annoying to traverse that you'd just rather abandon the journey altogether. The combat can be rewarding, but for the most part it's plagued by basic issues which hamper the experience. For example, if you or one of your team are spotted, then it's almost like you have neon signs over your head, as every single goon will be able to find you and hit you with incredible accuracy. And it would be remiss of me not to address yet more bugs. I've seen players get stuck on roads, had enemies spawn in behind me, and even had them not show up at all on defensive missions, which admittedly makes it a lot easier, but also a lot more boring. But it's not all about the shooting, as there's a huge amount of exploration to be done, so much in fact that it can sometimes feel a little overwhelming. You'll be gathering intel, skill points, resource and weapon parts all over the map, and while some areas feel like little mini raid dungeons, other collectibles are in the middle of nowhere, making for a rather empty-handed trek. The best way to describe the experience is modular. It's like Ubisoft looked through all of their games and cherry-picked the best bits to make Wildlands. You've got the combat style of Advanced Warfighter, the locale of Far Cry 3, the constant collectible finding from every other title they've ever made, and the driving mechanics from f***ing hell itself. Seriously, I cannot fathom what was going on with the programmers when it came to navigating this island by land, as the vehicles feel so unresponsive and unrealistic as they bounce over jagged rocks with nary a worry. Because of this borrowed nature, it really feels like Wildlands never hits with the full impact it wanted to. On paper, it sells itself as a desperate fight against overwhelming odds, with choices on how you approach combat and even the final boss. But in actuality, it feels like every other Ubisoft open world title, but with none of the personality. You're endlessly collecting items, capturing bases and sent on errands that it becomes an overwhelming exercise in monotony. It's an example where less would have been more. A smaller, more varied map, fewer cartel leaders to take down so it feels more focused, and many, many less collectibles would have cut the fat and delivered more on their initial promise. The game itself is fine, but it just feels a bit bloated. Now, before I talk about the multiplayer aspect of this title, let's address the single-player experience when bolstered by AI teammates. I found my bots-controlled brethren to be reliable, never got in the way, and always tagged along by warping into any vehicle that I was speeding away in. And therefore, I commend Ubisoft for making a game clearly aimed at multiplayer feel really competent offline. Okay, so onto the online portion, and my god, what a fluctuating experience. First, the bad. If you get dropped into a group of randos, I found my time to be painful, with zero support and worst of all, no communication despite me yelling in my headset very clear instructions. And I had situations where the rest of my team would suddenly run away from the objective and be about 5k away from where I was being pinned down. But now onto the good. When playing with a group of manly men like I did with the rest of the gamer lads, Ben, Peter and Scott, this was a much more cohesive experience. Taking down hostile camps and racing through the surroundings in planes, cars and automobiles was made all the more fun when you could actually talk to your team. We cruised through missions, and while we experienced even more bugs, the overall time was fairly enjoyable. Bottom line though, regardless of how you play, there's a competent experience both online and off. You just might have to look a bit harder for it online. So here are 3 things that you need to know about Wildlands. Number 1, this is a game which requires patience and tactical thinking. If you go in all guns blazing, you're going to find yourself not only on the end of a severe kicking by the pinpoint AI, but also staring at the long and boring bleed out respawn timer. So you got to pick your shots, stick to the shadows, and if all else fails, bombard the place with an attack helicopter. Number 2, your best experience of this game may well be on PC. Alongside all of the little graphical touches that the PC version adds, you stand a much better chance of your team actually talking to you. The PS4 seemed to be a ghost town for communication, and I've heard similar reports for the Xbox One. Given the nature of this game, your best bet is to either party up with friends or head to PC where chat and text options are much more interactive. And number 3, this is not the game-changing experience of the open world genre that it would like you to believe. While the separate parts of Wildlands are at best exceptional and at worst just average, the sum of all of this is an experience which feels like we've seen it before. We've been to tropical countries, helped rebels and take down gangs, and while this arguably has some very, very engaging combat, it's still not enough to be considered unique.
We are ghosts, and we do not exist.